She flew 17 hours to ask him questions he had already answered. The elevator doors opened on the 74th floor, and the first thing Amara Osei noticed was not the view, though the view was Seoul at 7 in the morning, gold and gray, and vast beyond the glass wall like something that had not yet decided what it would become. The first thing she noticed was the silence, a silence with a specific texture, the kind that gathers when people have spent years learning not to disturb the man at the center of it. She had read the file on Kwon Jae-won 3 times on the plane, youngest chairman in the Kwon Group's 60-year history, 34 years old and already the kind of man whose name alone moved markets. The file said he was known for operational precision, for restructuring failing divisions without ceremony, for giving interviews in which he said nothing, and said it with such absolute stillness that reporters filled in the silence with whatever they most feared about him. The file did not say he would be standing at the end of the corridor when she arrived, facing the window, not looking at her. She set her bag down by the reception desk, straightened her linen blazer, took her reading glasses off and tucked them into her breast pocket. He turned around. He looked at her the way someone looks at a door they have been expecting to break open, not surprised, not pleased, just already calculating the damage. She looked at him and thought, he already knows what I am going to find. She extended her hand. Amara Osei, International Trade Ethics Commission. He crossed the corridor slowly and took her hand. His grip was brief and exactly calibrated. Kwon Jae-won, a pause that lasted half a breath too long. I know who you are. Good, she said. Then we can skip the part where you offer me tea and tell me the Lagos documentation is being compiled. Something moved across his face. Not quite amusement, not quite surprise, something that had not decided what it was yet. The tea, he said quietly, is already made. If you are new to the Velvet Empire, welcome. This is a world where power and longing share every corridor, and love, when it arrives, never announces itself. Stay with us. What happens next will cost everyone in this story something they did not expect to lose. The conference room was all pale wood and floor-to-ceiling glass. 8 men in dark suits arranged themselves down one side of the table with the precision of people who had been seated this way before. Amara sat opposite them alone, her documents open, her pen uncapped. Jae-won sat at the head of the table and said nothing. His head of legal, a man named Park who had the permanent expression of someone waiting for bad weather, presented the company's full cooperative posture. Access to financial records, access to HR documentation, access to current labor compliance reports. I'll need the original shipping manifests from the Lagos facility, Amara said. Not the current ones, the originals, 2019 through 2021. A beat, 3 men looked at Jae-won without moving their heads. He looked at Amara. Those records are in archival processing, Park said. I was told they would be ready upon my arrival. There was a miscommunication in the preparation timeline. Mr. Park. Amara's voice did not rise, it simply became more still. I flew from London. I have a 12-week mandate. I don't need the records today. I do need a specific date when they will be available, in writing, before I leave this room. Park looked at his chairman again. Jae-won looked at the table. When he finally spoke, it was to Amara and only to Amara, and his voice was the voice of a man choosing his words the way you choose footing on uncertain ground. End of next week, he said. I'll confirm it myself. She wrote the date, capped her pen, looked up. Thank you, Chairman Kwon. He held her gaze for 1 second longer than he needed to. Then he looked away first. That was the first power shift. She had counted on none of them. That night in the hotel room the company had arranged, a room with an unobstructed view of the Han River, and a minibar she did not touch. Amara sat at the desk with the partial documents spread in front of her, and let herself think the thing she had been suppressing since the elevator. He had been standing there before she arrived, not greeting her, waiting for her, There was a difference. A greeting was performance. What she had walked into was a man already inside his own reckoning. She picked up her pen, set it down, picked it up again. He knows what's in those manifests, she thought. He's known the whole time. The question is whether he's been trying to hide it or trying to fix it. And she had been doing this long enough to know that sometimes those two things looked exactly the same from the outside. She wrote a note at the top of her intake document. Chairman has personal familiarity with the 2019-2021 records. Intervene directly in archive timeline conversation. Confirm whether intervention is protective or obstructive. She underlined the word confirm, then she underlined it again. 3 days into the audit, she found him in the archive corridor at 6:40 in the morning. He was reading something, leaning against the wall with his jacket off, sleeves rolled to the elbow, holding a single printed page with the particular focus of a man rereading something he already knows by heart. He looked up when he heard her footsteps, did not look surprised, did not look guilty, looked for just a moment like a man who had been caught being human. He folded the page and put it in his back pocket, reached down and picked up his jacket from the floor beside him. Early, he said. I could say the same. I come here sometimes. He said it without apology, when I need to think without someone watching me think. She looked at the archive doors behind him, the same room that held the records she was still waiting for. Are you reading the manifests? She asked. A long pause. He put his jacket on slowly, button by button. No, he said. I'm reading something my father wrote. She said nothing. He said nothing. The corridor held them both in its dim fluorescent quiet, and neither of them moved to end the moment. I'll have the manifest to you Friday, he said finally. Not next week, Friday. He walked past her. She turned and watched him go. Something about the way he moved down that corridor, straight-shouldered, unhurried, carrying something invisible, made her feel for the first time that she was not looking at an adversary. She did not write that down. The company dinner was held in a private room at a restaurant in Gangnam, where the plates were black stone, and the lighting was designed to make everyone look like they were being watched by candlelight. Amara attended as an observer, as the protocol required. She sat at the far end of the table with her interpreter, a young woman named Jae-won who had the careful neutrality of someone trained to translate power without flinching. The executive team laughed with the ease of men who had been laughing together in rooms like this for decades. The food arrived in quiet succession. The conversation moved between Korean and English without ceremony. At the midpoint of the meal, the senior vice president, a man named Shin, heavyset and confident in the way that only long-entrenched position allows, raised his glass and spoke in Korean for a full 30 seconds. The table laughed warmly. Yi-won's expression was unreadable. What did he say? Amara asked Jae-won under the noise. Jae-won's translation was careful and abbreviated. Something about leadership. Something about protecting what belongs to the family. Amara looked at Yi-won. He was looking at her, had been looking at her for the last several seconds. She looked back at her plate. Later outside, waiting for the company car, she was standing alone on the pavement when she heard footsteps behind her. She did not turn around. She knew the particular cadence of how he moved. What Shin actually said, Yi-won said quietly, standing beside her now, both of them facing the street, was that I protect what is mine with the same coldness I inherited from my father. He meant it as a compliment. She turned to look at him. Why are you telling me that? He looked at the street for a long moment. A taxi passed. A couple walked by speaking quickly, not looking up. Because Jae-won was being kind to you, he said, and you deserve to hear what was actually said. She studied his profile, the particular angle of a man making a choice he has not fully planned. And the coldness, she asked, did you inherit it? He was quiet for so long, she thought he would not answer. I inherited the impulse. He said, I am still deciding what to do with it. The car arrived. He held the door open for her. She got in. He did not. It was Jae-won who mentioned it. Casually, the way people mention things they do not realize are significant. That there was a resettlement group meeting that afternoon, former workers from a manufacturing facility in Lagos who were now living in a temporary housing complex in Mapogu. A community gathering, open to visitors. How did they get here? Amara asked. Jae-won checked her phone. There's a private relocation support fund, anonymous. It's been running for about 18 months, covers housing, language classes, work placement. Amara set down her coffee cup very slowly. She went to the meeting, sat in a low-ceilinged community room with plastic chairs and a folding table bearing tea and biscuits, spoke with 3 women who had worked the floor of the Lagos facility, listened to what they described, wrote nothing, just listened. That evening she went to Jae-won's office without an appointment. His assistant started to explain that he was in a call. Amara sat down in the waiting area and said, I'll wait. 20 minutes later, the assistant showed her in. He was behind his desk, standing, not sitting, already knowing by the specific quality of her arrival that this conversation was not procedural. You arranged the resettlement, she said. He did not confirm or deny. He walked around the desk and stood with his hands in his pockets, looking at her from across the room. Anonymous fund, she continued. 18 months old. The same 18 months since you took full control of the group. The same workers who are the subject of my audit. Silence. Jae-won. It was the first time she had used his given name. Neither of them acknowledged it, but both of them felt it. Why are you trying to fix this without letting anyone see you fix it? He looked at her for a long time. Because I don't want credit for it, he said. His voice was quiet, careful. And because the moment it becomes visible, it becomes legal exposure. And because, he stopped. Because. He looked away, toward the window, the city below them, patient and enormous and indifferent. Because my father built something I did not choose to inherit. And I have spent 3 years trying to decide what it means to run an empire that owes people something it has not yet paid. She stood very still. This is the thing she had not expected to feel, not sympathy exactly, something sharper. Recognition. The particular weight of someone who has been trying to do the right thing inside a structure that was not built for it. I still have to file the report, she said. I know. The remediation fund doesn't change what happened. I know. Then why did you want me to see it? He was quiet for so long that the city outside had time to shift, imperceptibly, from dusk toward dark. I didn't arrange for you to see it, he said finally. I just didn't arrange for you not to. The manifests arrived on Friday morning. All of them. The originals, unsanitized, in a sealed envelope delivered directly to Amara's desk by Jae-won's assistant with a handwritten note that said only, complete. She read through them over 6 hours, made her notations, cross-referenced the dates against the worker testimonies she had gathered, against the public compliance reports filed with the Korean Trade Board, against the anonymous resettlement fund's initiation date. The picture that emerged was exact and devastating. Systematic underdocumentation of labor hours, misclassification of contract terms, inadequate safety certification across 3 Lagos site buildings, all of it occurring between 2019 and 2021 under the direct operational management of the late Chairman Kwon Sr., with the tacit awareness of a board that had approved the cost structures that made the violations inevitable. And then, beginning in January of the following year, the month Jae-won assumed sole chairmanship, a series of quiet operational changes, new classification guidelines, revised safety standards, the anonymous relocation fund, not enough to undo the harm, but evidence of a man trying to hold a wound shut with his hands while the structure around him refused to acknowledge the wound existed. She sat back in her chair. She called him, not his assistant, his direct line, the number on the card he had handed her on the first morning. He answered on the second ring. "I have the manifests," she said. "I know. I need you to come and tell me what they mean, not your legal team, you, tonight." A pause brief. "Where?" he said. She named a cafe 2 blocks from her hotel, a quiet one. No marble, no cameras she had noticed, the kind of place where no one would expect to find either of them. He arrived before her, was sitting at a corner table with his jacket on the chair behind him and a cup of tea cooling in front of him. When she walked in, he looked up, and in that first unguarded second, before his composure reassembled, she saw something she recognized. Relief. The relief of someone who has been waiting a very long time to be asked to tell the truth. Before we continue, there is something heavy in what these 2 people are carrying tonight. The weight of an empire's debt. The weight of a truth that has been waiting too long to be spoken. The weight of wanting to trust someone when trust is the most dangerous thing in the room. If you are carrying something heavy tonight, something you haven't named yet, something you've been trying to fix alone, may you find one person, just one, who asks you to tell them what it means. May you have the courage to answer. May your honesty find the right hands. If this story is touching something real in you, like this video and subscribe to the Velvet Empire. Leave amen in the comments if these words found you. And stay with us, because what happens next in this cafe will change everything these 2 people thought they understood about each other. He told her all of it. Not the way someone confesses to get ahead of a consequence. The way someone speaks when they have finally found the right room for something they have been carrying alone. He told her about the day he found the original manifests in his father's private files, 6 weeks after the old man's funeral, during the legal transition of control. He told her about the board meeting where he had raised the compliance irregularities and been told, by 4 senior directors who had known him since childhood, that the matter had been managed, and he would be wise to let it remain managed. He told her about the remediation fund, about setting it up under a shell structure so the board could not touch it, about the legal exposure this created, exposure he had accepted willingly, because the alternative was leaving 37 families in Lagos with nothing, while the empire that owed them everything continued operating without flinching. And then he reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and placed a document on the table between them. She looked at it, she read it again. It was a legal clause, buried inside the terms governing international compliance audits that involved Kwon Group assets. Written 15 years ago, written by lawyers who had anticipated exactly this, a clause that voided an auditor's findings and exposed their commissioning body to significant liability if the auditor entered into any personal relationship with a subject of investigation. "How long have you had this?" she asked. 3 days after you arrived." She looked at him, looked at the document, looked back at him. "You haven't used it." "No. You could have ended this audit on day 3. "Yes. Why didn't you?" He picked up his tea, set it down without drinking, a man choosing his next sentence the way you choose a step on broken ground. "Because those women in Mapogu," he said slowly, "deserve to have what happened to them documented, in a real report, by a real person who went to that room and listened to them, and because..." He stopped. "And because..." He looked at her, directly, with the specific quality of a man who has run out of angles. "Because I would rather lose the company than use you against your own work." The cafe was quiet around them. A couple at another table laughed at something. A door opened briefly and let in a rush of night air and then closed. She sat with what he had just said for a long time without answering. This is the moment she had been most afraid of. Not a man who was guilty, a man who was trying, a man who had chosen her integrity over his own protection, and who had done it without telling her, and would have continued not telling her. "I have to file the report," she said. "Everything I've found." "I know, including the remediation fund, because if I don't and it surfaces later, it looks like concealment on my end." "I know, file it all." She looked at the clause still sitting between them on the table. "Destroy that," she said. "It's already been destroyed," he said. "This is the only copy. I brought it so you could see it existed and understand why it no longer does." She reached out and picked up the document, folded it once, twice, put it in her bag. "I'll dispose of it myself," she said, "so I know." He did not argue. He simply looked at her across the table with the expression of a man who has just understood that he trusts this person completely, and that this trust is the most dangerous thing that has ever happened to him. He walked her back to the hotel. They did not touch. They walked close enough that the city noise could not come between them. At the entrance she stopped, turned to face him. "Your pen," she said. He looked at her. "The one you carry in your jacket, the steel-nibbed one. You never use it. I've watched you sign everything on your tablet." He was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his pocket and held it out to her. She took it, turned it over in her hands. It was old, the barrel worn smooth at the grip from years of being held without being used. "My father's," he said. "My father gave me one," she said. She handed it back. "He said that signing something in ink means you're willing to be found." He looked down at the pen in his hand, then at her. "Good night, Amara." "Good night, Jae-won." She went inside. He stood on the pavement for a moment. Then he took the pen out and for no reason he could have explained uncapped it, held it, capped it again. He walked back into the city with it uncapped in his pocket. The board moved on a Tuesday. Amara found out from Jae-won, who had found out from a paralegal, who had overheard a conversation that was not meant to be overheard. The Kwon Group's legal team had filed an emergency motion with the Trade Ethics Commission, citing the non-disclosure clause that Jae-won had told her was destroyed. There were apparently 2 copies. The board had the other one. The motion alleged a personal relationship between Amara Osei and the subject of investigation. It requested immediate suspension of the audit and sought $40 million in liability damages from the Ethics Commission. It was filed at 8 in the morning. By 9:30, Amara's director had called from London. By 10, the Ethics Commission had issued a formal suspension order pending investigation of the allegation. She was sitting in the hotel lobby when Jae-won called. "I need you to know, I did not know the board had a copy." "I believe you." "Amara." "I believe you," she said again, steady, quiet, the voice she used when she had already passed through the first shock of something and arrived in the cold place on the other side of it. "What are you going to do?" A silence, long enough that she heard him breathe, long enough that she understood he was not calculating, he had already calculated. He was just finding the door. "I'm going to disavow it," he said, "publicly. I'm going to issue a statement withdrawing the motion under my authority as chairman and stating that the board acted without my approval. That will cost you the chairmanship vote next quarter." "Yes. They'll push you out." "Probably." She said nothing. The lobby moved around her. A porter rolled a luggage cart past. A couple checked in, laughing about something. "Jae-won, you spent 34 years building that position." "I spent 34 years inside a structure my father built," he said, and his voice had the quality she had come to understand as his version of certainty, not loud, not declared, just settled, like a door that had already closed. "There is a difference." She held the phone and did not say anything, and in that silence she understood fully what she felt for this man, and how entirely that feeling now lived inside the same room as the harm his family had done to 37 people in Lagos who were waiting for a report she was no longer permitted to file. "Don't do it for me," she said. "I'm not," he said, and then, after a breath, "I'm doing it because my name is going to be on the other side of this, and I want it to mean something I chose." The press statement went out at 2 in the afternoon. By 4, 3 major institutional investment groups had issued notices of concern. By 6, the board had convened an emergency session that Jae-won was not invited to attend. Amara watched the news alerts come in from her hotel room with her laptop open and her report, finished, thoroughly documented, the most complete audit she had ever produced, sitting in a folder she was no longer authorized to submit. The audit was reinstated 2 days later under a new lead investigator, a man named Reeves from the Commission's Brussels office, whom she had trained 2 years earlier, and who had the thoroughness of someone who did not yet understand why thoroughness cost you things. Her files were transferred to him, her findings, her interview notes, the Lagos testimony, the remediation fund documentation, all of it entered the official record under his name. Her name did not appear in the final report. She read it when it was published 6 months later on a Thursday afternoon in London, sitting at her kitchen table with a cup of tea gone cold. Every finding she had made was there, documented correctly, attributed accurately to the violations and the remediation both. The 49 pages of work she had done in Seoul, carried to the finish by hands that were not hers. She closed the laptop, sat for a long time with her hands flat on the table. She thought about her father's pen, about what it meant to sign your name to something in ink, about the difference between being willing to be found and actually being seen. Jae-won lost the chairmanship vote by 4 seats. He was given the title of non-executive advisor, an honorific that meant nothing, and a severance arrangement his lawyers called generous, and which he accepted without comment. He was photographed leaving the Kwon Group tower on the morning of his last official day in a dark coat, no tie, collar open. The photographs ran across 3 financial publications. None of the captions used the word loss. He stood on the pavement outside the building he had entered every morning for 7 years. He did not look up at the glass. He did not look back. He put his hand in his pocket, found the pen, held it. Then he walked. 8 months later, the Community Development Board in Accra met in a low white building near the Labadi waterfront on the 3rd Thursday of every month. The agenda for this particular Thursday included updates from a manufacturing ethics education program that had been quietly growing in reach for the past 2 quarters. Anonymous benefactor, significant operational funding, no naming rights requested. Amara had been brought in as an external ethics consultant for the board. She was not expecting anyone she knew. She walked in 12 minutes before the meeting was scheduled to begin, and stopped in the doorway. He was standing at the far side of the room talking to the program coordinator, a young woman with a clipboard who was speaking quickly and pointing at a chart. He was listening with the absolute stillness she had memorized in Seoul, in corridors and conference rooms and a cafe 2 blocks from her hotel. He had lost the chairman's posture, not in the way of diminishment, in the way of a man who had put down a weight he had been carrying since before he could choose it. He looked up across the room, found her immediately. Neither of them moved. The coordinator said something to him. He said something brief in return, his eyes still on Amara, and then he crossed the room, not quickly, with the measured pace of a man who has learned to be very careful about what he approaches. He stopped in front of her. She looked up at him. He looked down at her. No boardroom, no legal teams, no empire between them. Just a room in Accra with white walls and afternoon light coming through the windows and 2 people standing in what they had survived. The program, she said. The manufacturing ethics curriculum. Yes. That's you. It's the fund, I just directed. She looked at him for a long time. He held it, did not flinch from it. This was new. The Jae-won she had known in Seoul had held eye contact as a strategy. This man held it as a truth. She reached into her bag and set her pen on the table beside them. The steel-nibbed one, her father's. He looked at it, then at her. I read the report, she said. Everything I found is in it. I know. I read it too. My name isn't in it. I know that too. He reached out and picked up her pen, held it the way she had held his months ago outside a Seoul hotel at night, turning it over, feeling the weight of something that had been used for what it was made for. Your father said that signing in ink means you're willing to be found, he said. He did. I've been trying to find the right thing to sign my name to. He set the pen back on the table between them. I think this might be it. She looked at him, at the pen, at him again. Outside the window, Accra moved through a late afternoon. The streets loud and layered and alive with the specific warmth of a city that has always known how to hold complicated things without letting them break it. You owe me an introduction, she said, to the program coordinator. Something shifted in his face. Not a smile exactly. The thing that lives in the same place a smile does when the occasion calls for something more careful and more real. I do, he said. He picked up her pen and placed it deliberately in her hand. Her fingers closed around it. They walked into the room together. The report the Trade Ethics Commission published that year cited significant labor violations in the Kwon Group's Lagos operations between 2019 and 2021. It also noted an existing anonymous remediation program that had provided housing, language support, and employment placement to 37 displaced workers and their families. The Kwon Group was fined and restructured. The board was reconstituted. The late Chairman Kwon Sr.'s operational decisions were formally entered into the public record. None of this undid the years. None of it gave the women in Lagos back the hours they were never paid for or the safety standards they were never given. Accountability, when it finally arrives, does not erase the debt. It just makes it visible. Amara Osei returned to active auditing 9 months after the suspension. Her record was cleared. Her findings, though entered under another name, were cited 3 times in subsequent international labor compliance decisions. Kwon Jae-won's name did not appear in the financial press for 2 years. When it did, it was in a small trade publication covering ethical manufacturing programs in West Africa. His photograph was not included by request. The manufacturing ethics program in Accra expanded to 4 countries within 3 years. The pen Amara set on the table that afternoon in the Labadi waterfront building. He eventually signed his name with it, to the program charter, to a public statement acknowledging the harm the Kwon Group's Lagos operations had caused, to the funding agreement that bore his name for the first time without the empire behind it. 37 names came before his on that document. He had insisted. There is a kind of love that does not announce itself. It doesn't arrive in a grand gesture or an impossible sacrifice. It arrives in the decision to tell the truth when you did not have to, in the choice to keep someone's work safe when destroying it would have saved you, in the willingness to sign your name to something real, even when the room where you built your power is no longer yours. Jae-won and Amara will stay with me long after this story ends, because they remind me that sometimes the most courageous thing 2 people can do is refuse to let the world they live in decide what they are allowed to become to each other. But I want to ask you the question I cannot answer. Amara's work is in that report. Her name is not. Jae-won disavowed the clause that erased her, but his family wrote the clause. His empire created the harm she was sent to document. He spent years trying to fix it quietly, and that quietness is part of why her name never made the final page. So tell me, Is the love that grows between them an act of justice, or the most sophisticated form of the same erasure that came before? Leave your answer in the comments. I mean it, there is no safe answer here, and I want to read everyone. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe to the Velvet Empire. Every subscriber keeps this world alive, and there are more stories waiting in it. Stories where love costs something real. Stories that ask the questions no one else is asking. Stay close, the Empire continues. Velvet Empire Stories, where love is dangerous and loyalty is everything.